Hey, welcome. So, when we talk about the underworld, we all kind of think we know the story, right? It's this place of eternal fire and punishment for the wicked. But what if that version, the one that's everywhere in our culture, is just one page in a much, much bigger book? Today, we're going to tear up those familiar maps and take a journey through some totally different landscapes of the afterlife. So, just for a second, when I say the word underworld, or even hell, what's the very first thing that pops into your head? Is it a picture, a feeling, maybe a color? Okay, just hold that thought.
I'm willing to bet for a lot of us, the image is something like this. Fire, demons, agony, pure evil. It's all about divine justice, or maybe divine revenge. And look, that's a powerful idea, for sure. But it's actually a pretty modern and, honestly, simplified take on what people used to believe. To really get this, we have to start somewhere completely different, somewhere colder, more orderly, and way more, well, bureaucratic.
Okay, so our first stop is ancient Greece. And here, the afterlife wasn't some big moral drama. Nope, it was more like cosmic administration. It was a physical place with its own rules, its own rivers, its own security, all governed by a principle that might feel really strange to us today.
You see, for the ancient Greeks, death wasn't really a spiritual mystery. It was a physical move to a specific, charted territory called Hades. This wasn't about judgment or hope in the way we think of it. It was about keeping the universe in a rigid, predictable order. And this is so important because it tells you what they were really worried about. Not so much individual sin, but cosmic chaos. By mapping the underworld, they made the inevitable manageable.
And check this out. This slide just shows how logistical it all was. Getting into Hades was basically a transaction. It wasn't about your character, it was about procedure. The god Hermes would lead you down, but Charon, the ferryman, wouldn't let you cross the river Styx unless you had the cash, a coin they'd put in your mouth when you were buried. And if you weren't buried right, too bad. You were stuck wandering the shore for 100 years. The system cared if you followed the rules, not whether you were a good person. And this, right here, this is the absolute key. Hades was for everybody. Good people, bad people, heroes, regular Joes, you all ended up in the same place. Now, it was usually described as kind of a gloomy, shadowy version of life, but it wasn't an automatic torture chamber. It was simply the inescapable universal destination for the dead.
So after you've paid your fare and you're across the river, you meet the last line of security, Cerberus, the famous three-headed dog. But here's the thing people always get wrong. His job wasn't to keep souls out. His main purpose was actually to be friendly to people coming in, but absolutely ferocious to anyone who tried to leave. He was the final, irreversible lock on the door to the underworld. So once you're inside, you get sorted. And again, this just blows up our modern ideas. Take a look at this breakdown. A tiny, tiny fraction, like the worst of the worst who personally offended the gods, they went to Tartarus for eternal punishment. A handful of epic heroes got to go to the paradise of the Elysian fields. But the vast majority, that huge 75% chunk, they just went to the Asphodel Meadows, a neutral, gray, totally joyless place where you just existed, a shadow of your former self.
So, when you put it all together, the Greek underworld was all about stability. It was a known process, a clear journey with a predictable outcome. The whole system wasn't designed to make people suffer. It was designed to maintain cosmic balance, to make sure the dead stayed dead, the living stayed living, and the universe kept ticking along like it should. Order over agony. That was the name of the game.
Okay, so just when you start to get your head wrapped around that clean, administrative map of Hades, our next perspective comes along, rips it all up, and throws a whole new kind of puzzle at us. We're moving from a physical geography to a labyrinth of words, the biblical afterlife. Right. So the single English word we use, hell, is actually a catch-all translation for a bunch of different words in the original Hebrew and Greek, and they do not all mean the same thing. Take Sheol from the Old Testament. It's way closer to the Greek Hades. It's just a general word for the grave, the pit, where everyone good and bad goes. But then you have Gehenna, and that's the one that specifically means a place of fiery punishment and real torment after a final judgment. Two very different ideas. And believe me, it gets even more complicated from there. The Bible uses this really rich, overlapping vocabulary for what happens after death. I mean, you've probably heard some of these terms: the abyss, Abaddon, Tartarus, the lake of fire. Each one has a slightly different shade of meaning, and they show up in different contexts. The point is, it's not one single, easy-to-pin-down place. It's more like a collection of related, and sometimes kind of blurry, concepts. One source I read put it perfectly, with this amazing car analogy. It's like you tell one friend you have a silver two-door, and you tell another you have a small import.
You're giving different descriptions, right? But you're still talking about the same car. It's possible that terms like Gehenna and the Lake of Fire are doing the same thing, describing the same reality but from different angles, one emphasizing the fire, another its permanence, instead of being two separate levels on a map.
So what's the takeaway here? Well, where the Greeks gave us a neat geographical map, the Judeo-Christian tradition gives us something more like a complex theological and really a linguistic landscape. It suggests a single, profound reality that's just too big to be captured by one name. It's complexity over simplicity. All right, we've looked at the afterlife as a place of order and a place of justice. But what if it isn't a place at all? Our third perspective shifts gears completely, moving from geography and theology into philosophy, and it asks a totally different question. What is it that actually dies?
So the philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer had this idea that your self is actually split in two. On one hand, you have your individual self, your memories, your ego, your personal story. He saw this as a tiny little keyhole that you look through. But then there's the universal will, this vast, unending, shared consciousness, the incredible view beyond that keyhole that connects all living things. And that leads to this really profound idea. From this point of view, dying isn't a journey. You're not going anywhere. It's the moment your individual perspective, your personal story, your ego, that little keyhole, simply dissolves. And what's left isn't just nothingness. It's your consciousness merging back into the great universal whole that it came from.
So in this model, there's no destination. There's no river to cross, no judgment to face. Death is simply a process of integration. The temporary spark of awareness that you call I just rejoins the timeless, universal current. It's integration, not a destination. Wow. Okay. So we've got three totally different maps, right? One of cosmic order, one of divine justice, and one of philosophical integration. So what do all these different visions of what comes next tell us? Not just about death, but maybe about life?
Let's just put the two big geographical ideas side by side for a second. The contrast is, well, it's stark. The Greek Hades is neutral, misty, and it's for everyone. Its purpose is to maintain balance. Abrahamic hell is fiery, agonizing, and only for the wicked. Its purpose is to deliver justice. They are two systems designed to do completely different jobs.
And this really is the heart of it all. These maps of the underworld, whether they're Greek or biblical or philosophical, they aren't necessarily literal blueprints of what's waiting for us. They're mirrors. They reflect the deepest values of the cultures that dreamed them up. The Greeks valued cosmic stability and order above all else. The Abrahamic traditions valued divine justice and moral accountability. And philosophies like Schopenhauer's value a sense of cosmic unity, of getting beyond the individual ego.
Which, of course, leaves us with one last big question to think about. What about our modern ideas? The ones we see in movies, read in books, or maybe hold ourselves? What do our maps of the afterlife, the ones so often dominated by fire and punishment, or maybe by peaceful nothingness or reincarnation, what do they reflect about the values, the fears, and the hopes of our own time?